Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shakespearean Shrew. I am your Shakespearean Shrew, Karen Feiner, lover of all things bard and books. This podcast is a decorum be damned entrance into understanding Shakespeare stages, for there are many and all the players on it. Today, we are talking books, and not just any books, but indie bookstores. So I am at Second Story Books in OKC with some of the finest independent bookstore owners in the area. I'm very excited, and I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves and the name of your amazing bookstores.
My name is Charles Martin. I am the creative director of Literati Press. We are a bookstore in the Paseo Arts District, but also a publisher and a creative writing center.
Excellent.
I'm Kathryn Lynn, and I am one of the co-owners of Second Story Books.
I'm Jason Daniel. I'm one of the co-owners of the Banned Press, and we are a mobile bookstore, and we do pop-ups as well.
I'm Brecheen. I'm the other co-owner of Second Story Books.
Excellent. Okay, so what made you want to open a bookstore? And this can go to anybody. Anybody can start this party. So what made that what you decided to do?
Kathryn and I were actually going to do a podcast. And we got together, we talked about our first book, or like we were getting together to decide, we had read the first book, we were going to decide how we were going to do the podcast. And then Kathryn said, what if we did a bookstore instead? And so then we did that instead.
But he was like, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, didn't miss that beat. I was like, what about a bookstore? And said, yes, absolutely. And we're like, good, it's sorted. And then we just kind of like brushed all the podcast stuff off the table.
Love it. That's what I'm here for.
Like the equipment is still in their box.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess everyone should be like a lover of books, right? You wouldn't want to start a bookstore if you didn't care or love books.
I mean, it's a cash cow, clearly. We're all just rolled up in our Mercedes Benz.
Yeah. To be real, we're all in it for the money.
We're in it for the money.
All of us, yeah.
Shame.
I guess for me, I came from I taught sixth grade, and I actually taught in this area. So I think having this new administration come in like around like 2022, that was kind of the focal point of maybe there's something going on where people need to like have books, I guess, protected and also out there for people to read, because lo and behold, there was a lot of books that I was not allowed to teach.
Shocking.
Yeah.
There was a really great surge of bookstores that all popped up around that time, and it was really, really cool because at the time that we started in 2016, it was like Best of Books, Full Circle, us. No, Commonplace hadn't opened up yet, but Magic City, no, they hadn't opened up yet. So there wasn't many, it just like statewide. And then, and it felt pretty lonely. And then all of a sudden it was just this flourishing of bookstores. So it's really, really great. Because I always kind of imagined like the ideal state being what it was like in the 1900s, where every city center had multiple bookstores. Each one had its particular focus. So you don't go to the bookstore going for a particular book. You have an idea of a book and you choose the bookstore to go to. And that's where we're getting to. Like all of these bookstores all have their own unique personalities. Like Second Story, like I really know their vibe. I know Commonplaces. I know, certainly us, Banned Books, it's in your name.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, like Green Feather. We have so many great destinations. It's really, really cool. And when we did our passport, there was like 16 bookstores on that. It was incredible.
Yep. We went to them all.
Yeah.
And 2 have opened since then.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a book lover in Oklahoma City. So we opened in 2016. We were a publisher since 2010. Continue to be a publisher. We just put out a couple books in October. So I didn't ever want to open a bookstore because I already had too much on my plate, which I'm sure is probably a common refrain. But I had shot this horror movie in the old public swimming pool in the Paseo Arts District, and the owner of the swimming pool, Joy Rebelt, she said she contacted me. I did a couple other events there, and it was just completely gutted. Nothing going on inside it. And it's a creepy building. It's not. It's a good looking building on the front half. It's creepy everywhere else, but a lot of character, you might say. And she said, I want to open up the Paseo Plunge. It had been closed since the 70s. Do you have any interest? And I was like, sure. She wanted to do it as a gallery, and I was like, well, as long as we can put up, some of our books that we publish. And she was like, well, you should do a bookstore. And I was like, I'm not doing a bookstore. Anyway, so about a couple months later, we have a bookstore, and we started out with just one shelf. I waited tables at the time, and somebody would donate another bookshelf. I'd pick up a couple extra shifts, and whatever I made, there are no shifts, I would point that towards books, and we'd get another load of books in. We went from that first couple of months, people coming in, you're like, you're really a bookstore. We're doing the best we can, to like filling out and getting to the point that we had too many books. And Joy was like, yeah, I'm kicking you out, but I'm going to move you down the street. She, was an awkward fit for a bookstore. We liked it, but she moved us to another space where one tenant had just vacated, and another tenant was about to vacate. Stardance, which is a loss on the street, but it allowed us to combine the two spaces. And the thing that we always wanted was more space, so we could do more mentorship. That's always been important to us. So the Creative Writing Center is online. We've done some pretty big events with the extra room that we had. Tony Westland, who's an incredible carpenter, made these rolling bookshelves for us. So we have this very versatile space where we can, we can chase after all of the shiny things that we've always wanted to do.
So you bring up something that I love, which is the personality of bookstores.
Mhm.
Each bookstore has its own identity. How did you come up with the identity for your bookstore? Is that something that you decided beforehand, or is it just something that kind of happened based on your own identities?
I think for Brittany and I, when we first started talking about it, it was a little bit magical, actually. Like, we had both dreamed the same dream, and we were both remembering that dream that we had. And we're like, oh, it's like this. Oh yeah, like this. We're like, yeah. Like, for like some reason, like this was in both of our heads at the same time. I don't know how that happened, but it was like a really lovely process, like uncovering all the things that we wanted to do. But yeah, I think originally, like from the very beginning, we wanted to be, queer, witchy, just Frog and Toad vibes was how we explained it to everybody. It's like, we're Frog and Toad. It's Frog and Toad in the forest.
Yeah.
Just, we even have leaves on the ground. Every time the door opens, these leaves come in. It's like, yeah, that's part of our decor.
Make yourselves at home.
I think for having the name, the Banned Press in ours, that kind of just like pushes the conversation of like banned books, challenge books,
Mm-hmm.
but also gives, I can, tell people about like, okay, well, we also focus on like marginalized authors and stories as well. So I think having a lot of titles for different like Hispanic, queer, indigenous, BIPOC authoring stories is like something that we really wanted to focus on as well. Because you don't get that a whole lot sometimes in some places, they get kind of pushed away, pushed back.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You might get like a section in Barnes and Noble, at the right month of the year, but you don't really have
Right.
long-term investment in those kinds of titles.
Yeah, exactly.
So Literati Press started by stealing office supplies and making comics. So we've always been really scrappy. We've never had a lot of investment, as you might say. So although our new space is very, very beautiful, we had a lot of help with painting and things like that. I think you can still always see that everything we do feels pretty like DIY. Like we buying, shelves secondhand or building them ourselves. We're, we feature books that we, not just books that we, brought in from other wonderful publishers, but also ones that we make ourselves. So we really want to make our space home for creatives, and we're in the Paseo Arts District, so it's a good neighborhood for us. But whenever we think about what we want to do with our store, with Literati Press and our space as a whole, I think about what it was like for me and a lot of the people that work with us, where we were in our teens and 20s and knew that we had this creative fire to us, but there was no guidance. There was no real home for us. What do you do as a writer in the middle of the country where there's no industry? So we want to make our space the place where you go, and find good books. And of course, we want, dedicated readers coming to what we do as well. But we want it, a 16-year-old decides that he wants to start writing and their parents are like, I don't know what to tell you. Oh, there's Literati Press, let's go talk to them. And we're not going to publish everybody or anything like that. It's not, our model is, still very high curation on everything we do, but we want everybody who has questions about the process to come talk to us, because we've made every single mistake you can possibly make. So we're hoping to lay down some some base knowledge that the entire writing industry can feed off of, and everything that we do, the workshops, the books that we curate, everything, our hours, our open mics, everything is kind of bent to that. Like, we want to be a home for writers and artists, where they can figure out how to make this work.
So again, you talked about marginalized voices. You talked about creating experience and opportunity for authors or people who are desiring to write. And I think, again, that's something different. We mentioned Barnes and Noble, and how they choose their books is very often what's going to sell.
And what
And
they think the publishers think is going to sell.
Right.
Or what they can get really deep discounts on.
And so in independent bookstores, the curation process is quite different than a bigger bookstore. How do you go about curating the books for your stores? Is there a process? Is there chaos that you just kind of go into and embrace? How do you go about it?
Yeah, I think Brittany and I went the most chaotic route possible.
Love it.
Take it away.
Yeah, we started a spreadsheet and we came up with all the sections that we wanted to, and then we went through and just started adding, like, what were our favorite books, what were our friends' favorite books, what were books that we wanted to read. We'd go through like our own Goodreads or Storygraph and like see what we've added to our list over the years of what we wanted to read. And then we went through each list and tried to make sure that, do we have enough diverse voices in every single category? Like, do we have queer authors? Do we have BIPOC authors? We went through every section of our store and tried to make sure that in every section, everyone was represented, or as many as we could. Yeah.
I love that.
So we added titles one by one.
One by
until we
one.
had several
Oh, yeah.
thousands, and Brittany's like,
Yeah.
I'm never doing this again. Like, we don't have to.
It was
This is a one and done.
It was so bad.
They said Baker and Taylor, that was the first distributor that we used, and they actually had a service. It's like, we could just start the store for you and,
Yeah.
and sell you these titles that we suggest. And I was like, why would we do that?
Yeah, exactly.
No.
It's like, no,
That sounds terrible.
Keep your hands off my bookstore.
I know. Yeah.
Well, for us, we people come to indie bookstores because of the curation. Otherwise, they would just go to Amazon. And I still love Barnes and Noble. I still go there just as I go to other indie bookstores. It's still a good store, but you're not going to find surprising titles there. That's not what they do. And so our curation is based off the personalities of everybody that works there. And you still see the fingerprints of employees that, have moved on, Chloe and James and all of these. Like, you still see the echoes of the employees that were once there, and then Melissa and Kristen and John and Emmy and Ashley. And you see some of me too, but like, that's the beautiful thing about having so many voices represented in this thing that you started by just having some bookshelves, and it's all the things that you were just picking up. I think this is what other people would want to read. it starts taking over and it becomes like this community of books. And you see everybody's preferences, but you get to trust every book on that shelf because you trust the person who chose it.
I think one of my favorite things is when a customer's like, oh, I've read this book. It's totally your vibe. You should have it. You should stock it. And I'm like, and then we read it. And we're like, oh my gosh, yes. And like, I love that's
You
like
know me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, that's amazing. Yes,
Yes.
that's one of my favorite things is when like a customer can bring you a book and be like, this is you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just brought in Cowboys Are My Weakness. And I was like, I would have never got it on that title. And then I read it and I was like, oh my God, she's right.
It's
so good.
How widely we as, individual bookstore owners read, like we're never going to reach all of them. We're never going to find every good book. It's like we need everybody else to help us out.
But
It's
the
like
ones you
these-
do read, you're just like, I can tell you all about this. This is, you have to read this book.
Yeah.
So on yours, I'm curious, like having a name like Banned Books, is that a question that you get a lot? Like you only
Yeah.
carry banned books?
Yeah, because like a lot of people always ask, it's like, are all these banned? It's like, yes and no. Yes, we have a section where these ones are, these are the ones that are challenged. These are the ones that are actually banned.
Yeah.
And then the ones that are, I guess, not challenged or actually banned, it's like they would be if they actually probably,
If they ever made it on the shelves.
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like
shelves,
there's obviously committees that go through books to see like this there's content in this that is deemed challengeable or whatever. So
Mhm.
they probably in a way would be, but also we also focus on just like, okay, the story has queer authors in it or queer characters. This is an author of a certain background or whatnot. So that's kind of where we kind of curate towards is like, okay, you gotta have your books that you curate to, obviously, because like I'm someone that definitely likes to. I'll look at my list like I put too many thrillers in there. Whoops. Too many thrillers, too many mysteries. Like I think we got to put a little bit more romance into our list too. Yeah, that's. I'm obviously a big thriller mystery fan.
Yeah.
So that's where Micah comes in.
Yes. Well, she's the same way too sometimes. But Micah, my partner, she also is like, ooh, I put way too many. She's big into like kind of like fantasy books and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
you gotta have an even balance.
Such a good time for fantasy too. There's so many good
Yes.
books.
It is, right?
in middle grade.
Oh,
such a
yeah.
good era for like middle grade fiction.
Mhm.
Kind of wish I was like growing up like in school and finding these titles in my library. It's like, oh, we did not have this kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
It's amazing.
Well, and that's the thing, like middle grade, like oh my gosh, what is it? The Eyes and the Beautiful. Is that right? Yeah, The Eyes and the Beautiful is by the guy who started McSweeney's or to help start McSweeney's.
Oh yeah, Dave Eggers.
Dave Eggers, thank you.
The
But, like,
Impossible something.
Yeah, The Eyes and the
yeah.
Impossible. That's what it was. But it's a middle grade book, and I would put that in the hands of anybody.
Yeah.
It's an
Mhm.
incredible, and there's so many middle grade books that are like that. It's like, you have adults kind of wandering over there and feeling,
Guilty or
guilty
like,
or like, am I supposed
shit.
to actually take this from the shelf? It's like, yeah, they're great books. They just middle grade is often like middle grade and YA. It's like they're kind of selected because of various content that is there or not there. Sometimes middle grade has shorter chapters and simpler language, but these are all still really beautiful stories.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue. So I'm going to jump right on that one. What is a book that you have read in your life that has changed the way you see the world? Are there any titles for you that just kind of changed your perspective? Which I think maybe all books do in a sense, but
Yeah.
Which one rattled you to the most?
yeah.
Yeah, that's a large question.
Hmm.
I think one book that I've always come back to was probably one of my favorite books, like growing up in middle school. It's called Breathing Underwater. And it was a title that a lot of people were like, hey, you got to read this book. But you kind of have to, take it with like, some kind of open-mindedness because it centered a lot on like abuse. And the main character comes from like, a pretty wealthy family and like well off. And it just gives you the conversation of, abuse can happen to like under any home, any circumstance. And it doesn't have to be like, someone who's like not coming from like a good home.
Right.
It's like this can happen to anyone. And it was like really mind opening. It's like, wow, this is a really powerful book. And it comes from like perspective of like the past. He's writing from the past, but also is writing from in the future tense of like what happened that led me to this point. Good book.
So there's a lot of answers to this question, but I'll go to the one that like was the most impactful as far as what storytelling goes, and stick with me. So in elementary school, they would give comics to kids to like try and teach things. And one of them that we got it was a Marvel comic. They gave it to every kid in class, and it was about abuse. And it was this comic, specifically there was a Spider-Man one, and it was talking about sexual abuse. And nothing was explicitly shown or anything like that. But I had read comics, I was a pretty big comic book. I didn't read as many superheroes, but I read a lot of comics. And it was so startling that you could tell that kind of story in that kind of format. It was so unexpected. And like that always stuck with me, that you could take this genre that you think you understand and then just completely subvert it in a way that, I don't know, that, just really, really stuck with me. So a lot of the books that we carry, a lot of the ways that I write myself kind of got that kernel there from that one thing. It's not like the most elevated answer I could give, but it really is the one that like, I was so young that my trajectory as a storyteller just shifted. And it's just kind of continued listing that direction ever since.
That's a great answer.
I think this is also kind of a cop-out. For me, it's almost always the book I most recently read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Britni can tell you I am always obsessed with the book that I've just read. Well, maybe not all of them, but like the last 5-star read, I'm not going to shut up about. I'm like, guys, this is life-changing. Like every other week, I'm reading a book that has changed my life, and obviously
Kathryn's Lady Chatterley face.
Okay, it has good social commentary. It's not all about butt stuff. It's a good book.
Is it smut?
It was definitely banned in its time for being smutty.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's socialist. Talking about the workers and Lady Chatterley being, it's like it's got classism, it's got all the things you want.
There's a reason that it's survived and we still talk about it today.
Yeah.
Yes.
They like remake the movie, like every decade or something. But
I saw a couple of those on Skinemax.
that was not the example I was going to go for. I'm so sorry. But yeah, I mean, it did blow my mind. I was like, oh, this is not at all what I expected. This is actually challenging, like ingrained, mores of its time, and it was fighting that, and it was banned repeatedly, not just because of the sex stuff, but because of the classist stuff, and because what he was saying about workers and industrialism. And I was like, you guys, this isn't just a book with a lady's butt on the cover. I mean, it is, and not gonna lie, that's what drew me. But like, it was really good, and I did. I went through phase trying to make everybody read Lady Chatterley's Lover, and we're gonna do it in book club for 2025.
I gave in.
I yielded.
But no,
No.
I was gonna say The Service Berry. Robin Kimmerer.
Absolutely, yeah.
Again, I was like, Britni, take this. I'm reading it right now.
Yeah.
And Shani? Yeah. So I was like, gave a copy to Shani, gave a copy to Britni. And we just sat down right here. I'm like, read right now.
We need to talk about
this.
Yeah, it's one of those books that I want to be constantly reading. Like I want to be, when I finish it, I want to like start it again the next day because I don't ever want it to be out of my thoughts, but I have like 100 books like that. It's like, I just want, sorry.
No, I love that you brought that up because it brings me to what is a book that you can read over and over again? Do you have, obviously you do. Does anybody else have a book that they go back to that they can read kind of over and over again? I mean, mine's Pride and Prejudice. I'll throw that out there. Yeah. I have 5 different versions of it.
Gosh.
Kathryn has a problem.
I have 8 complete works of Shakespeare. Like,
I mean, you were telling us about, whenever you're book your Jane Austen books, it's like,
Oh,
no,
yes.
that's what Jane Austen
Yeah.
books.
Yes, we were talking about the fact that Andrew tends to put things on top of my complete works of Jane Austen for height. And I'm like, what is wrong with you?
I feel like at the slightest inconvenience in my life, I will just go reread it of Green Gables. The whole series, start to finish.
Praise. Yeah.
And the
No.
minute I'm sad.
Yes. Yes.
But it's like, isn't life so tragical? Like,
I love it.
Oh my
I
God.
love Anne so much.
No, I think every woman can kind of go back to
Yeah.
that. Like, so many of us want to be her.
Yeah.
Like her and Lizzie Bennet, I think, are my 2 where I'm like, I could be either of those characters and it's a good day.
Yes. I like to reread Perks of Being a Wallflower. It's been a book. It's still just a great coming of age story, and it's a short read too.
Yes.
Yeah, I was always recommended to, like, if there's any young adult that's like, it's like a book would be good for me. I was like,
This one, got it.
want to read Perks of Being a Wallflower?
And it also reads really brisk too, so reluctant readers tend to latch on to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good book. I don't know. I think that's one of the things you have to sacrifice being a bookstore owner and a publisher is that I feel guilty rereading books now because there's always so many books to read.
That's real. That is very real because there's like, dozens and dozens of books being published this month that you want to read. It's like, why should I spend time reading a book that I've already read when I could be learning something new,
And when you're a bookstore owner and you're buying books, like you realize how much incredible stuff is coming out all of the time. Yeah. So that fear of missing out, like that's our constant state.
Always.
Yeah.
I always relate to, like, when people buy, like, when they get like a puppy or a new dog, it's like, and then there's like all these shelter dogs, like, you could have got me,
Yeah.
There's all these other dogs you could have been getting.
There's definitely books that I go, I definitely used to go back to, and every once in a while I'll crack them and read a little bit. That I'm trying to like figure out how they do what they do. But yeah, most of the time it's just like, it's just looking at like an old friend. You're like, one day we can be.
I think that's what it is that brings me back. It's like, and everyone says I'm a book hoarder, which I mean, they're not entirely
There's no such thing as
wrong.
hoarding.
That's why we started stores.
It's called personal library.
It is.
It's more than
Mine-
1,000. It's a library.
That I officially have a library. I am well over
So not hoarding.
my quota.
You're just a librarian.
I'm just a librarian.
Yeah.
But I always, but I connect. Like for my life, my books have saved me on multiple occasions as I grew up. And I think for me, my books are friends. They are, companions. And so I'll pick when I'm feeling terrible, I'll pick up one of those books, and that's kind of what I go to find that feeling again.
It's the reason that people buy physical books whenever ebooks are so much easier to get to. Because
I can't
these are
believe it.
physical manifestations of who you are as a person, like mile markers in your life, things that demonstrate your values, the things that you hold important. They contain the characters that we love. So whenever you come into somebody's house, you don't you look at their big screen, you don't really look, you might look at their kitchen because that's also very informative. But like the thing that everybody goes to is the books. It used to be the DVDs too, but nobody has any of those. So like, this is how you really get a sense is this a person I'm interested in spending time with?
Yeah.
And someone who comes to your house and doesn't remark on your books.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Who are you? Yeah. Is there a book that you're particularly proud to own? I have a signed copy of Apple Fugard's Master Harold and the Boys, and that is my pride and joy. I love what he did at that time period in apartheid South Africa. I think he's one of those voices and people who showcased other voices so well. That's my
So I have, and this is, I don't know, maybe a little too self-promoting, but I have I still have all of the physical proofs of Natasha Alterichi's Heathen on my bookstore. bookshelf, and it's a book that we started publishing. Well, we published the first 4 issues in the trade before it completely outgrew us, and we upsold it to a larger publishing company. And it's since had this incredible life. It's one of the best graphic novels, one of the best comic series ever come out of Oklahoma. And so so the proofs are just loose sheets of paper, just crammed in between a bunch of other books. But like every time I see it, I was like, that was something that we were a part of that became much bigger than us. And it was it's nice to have those.
Yeah. Wow. Any others?
What you, Kathryn?
Hmm?
You have anything?
Like the one that comes to mind is stupid. It's a copy of Charlotte's Web that Britni gave to me. She found it and gave it to me. It's in Latin, so it's
That's amazing.
And I love it so much. I also have a few other kids' books in Latin, and I was a nerd who took Latin in school, so I can actually read it. And for some, it just
Can you read it out loud though?
I've never tried.
Because that's
you do that
that-
with story time, reading that out loud. I will show up.
You are the only one.
Nope, I'll be there.
A bunch of really confused children.
Like, what is this book about?
Is she unwell?
She's speaking in tongues.
But yeah, I don't know why. That just really brings me joy that something has been translated into a dead language, and I still understand it, and it's still impactful, and I love it.
There's a book that I have. It is a signed copy of like a survey of New York architecture. I don't care about New York architecture at all. I got this book because I visited, we were doing a documentary in New York, and we stayed at this guy's house. He was the son of a famous architect, and he had a whole brownstone. So like a four stories right in the middle of Manhattan. And it was a bizarre weekend. It was such a bizarre weekend. There was this epic game of Risks that almost got me disinvited to the house.
Oh man.
Like the documentary itself never came out, but like the rough cut of it is fascinating. It's about trying to use art to overcome like the housing crisis, to like make houses into art pieces. And it was great. They just couldn't get the funding to finish it. And I really wanted to get it done because probably going to have another housing crisis pretty soon. So I mean, we're really in the midst of one, but and so every time I see that book, I think of that weekend. Never read the book and probably never will.
Love it.
But it's just like this memoir,
Yeah.
or not memoir, a memento. Yeah.
I think I have a signed copy from like Jim Starlin of like Marvel's The End. But if anyone ever finds a signed copy from Alan Moore's Watchmen, I want it.
I've got a buddy that found one, and I'm like, "Are you sure that's real?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, I think it's real." That's a hard get.
Yes.
That's a hard get.
Yeah, Alan Moore is not
Big on the-
out and about these days.
Yes.
Hasn't been for a while, and doesn't particularly enjoy the Watchmen.
Yeah, he's in his own world most of the time.
Yeah, he's interesting. I got a buddy that he's also like one of the. He speaks in paragraph form. He's very, very intelligent. He did Rob Volmar. He did The Bluesman, which is also an excellent graphic novel that came out of Oklahoma. But he did an interview with Alan Moore, and it was just like two like very similar personalities coming together for this one interview, and it came out exactly how I'd hoped it would. Lots of long sentences.
So on the other end of the spectrum, are there any books that it's your guilty pleasure? Do you have a book that is your
Sports.
anything sports?
Books. God, I love sports books, sports movies, sports books. The dumber they are, usually the more that I like them. Like I want something very specific whenever I read a sports book. Even if I know where the ending's gonna be, like everything about the ending from like the first sentence, I'm like, this is good. This is just a nice, gentle, easy, cozy read.
Yeah.
That's like, for me, it's what my partner refers to as dragon porn.
Dragon.
I've never heard that before, but I know immediately why you're talking about it.
Do tell.
So it's like the romanticy. genre that has kind of emerged. And by the end of the semester, my brain is roasted, and
Yeah.
all I want to read are just like it's dragonborn, like just like the stuff that you don't have to really think about. Like it's, but yeah, that's my guilty pleasure. I will.
Very smut scaling.
Yes.
It's like Game of Thrones. Is that
So-
kind of like
So-
Too dark.
too dark? Too dark. Okay.
Although
I know exactly.
definitely did.
I know
but
exactly
like,
the genre. We actually have a little subsection. I think you do too.
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought so.
We didn't
but
start out with that section, but it developed
Yeah.
out of demands.
You just
Yeah.
walked in one day and it was just there.
Surprise! It's all the fantasy and romance readers who were like, nope.
Just re-shelved it. Wrote a little.
these go
marker.
here.
Yep.
Yeah, no. But yeah, so that's that's mine.
Dan O'Donohue, he just released I promise this relates. He just released a family kind of like 3-panel newspaper comic style book called Based on a Conversation. He's local. And he had a signing on Friday, and I was talking to him, and I was like, you need to do a middle grade novel. What you need to do one, because I think our graphic novel, because it's really, really, they're really hot right now, and his tone is perfect for it. And we were talking about ideas of what he might be interested in. It's like, well, my daughter's just really into dragons, but she's also into sci-fi. And I was like, space dragons, start writing now.
Done. Sold.
We looked it up. There's only like a couple like really lame titles of space dragons. So I was like, it is wide open.
Yeah.
Buddy. This is how you make $1 million.
Fill the niche.
Fill the niche.
How's it going?
I don't know. It started on Friday, so I'm hoping
Okay.
he's got roughs done already.
So 50,000 words already. Come on.
So
You got
something
beta
to do
readers,
with
Got
that.
beta
Yeah,
readers.
we're ready for it. We
And
got
John,
you.
if you are listening to this, the clock is ticking.
The people want the story.
Yeah.
Give the
Yes.
people what they want.
But I think that like plays into the wide variety of texts that we desperately want and need and sometimes don't get because it's not what people put in the canon. It's not what people think of as literature, and I got that a lot growing up is, why are you reading that? It's not literature.
Mhm.
And I was just like, please. But, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie in her TED Talk, The Dangers of a Single Story, she talks about that idea of, growing up in a world where she wrote white people, even though she wasn't white, because that's what she knew from the stories she read. And so I think what everybody in this room is doing, and that's so important, is like we talked about, cultivating stories from a lot of different perspectives. But we also have an emergence of banning books it's not obviously the first time in history that this has become more prevalent, but it is returning with a fervor that is disturbing, I think, from my perspective anyway. So how do bookstores fight against this dangerous reality? Everyone looks at the Banned Press.
So, yeah, you started a bookstore based on this premise. So, yeah, you
Yes.
should definitely lead this conversation.
It all really started with we were kind of coming up with just like names and logos and whatnot, and I had drawn like a picture of Ryan Walters as Hitler, and I was like, "Is this too extreme?
Have I gone too far?
Have I gone
Generally,
too
when you
far?"
drop the H-bomb, it's a good time to reassess.
Yes, I was like, this might be a little bit too much. But yeah, that's kind of where the idea of like the banned press, like we want to do, let's do banned books. I mean, it's like, it's getting hot right now. I mean, if you look at Pen America's like webpage, it's just like,
Yeah.
they are updating every day of like, oh, we're up 4,000 books that are being banned and challenged. We're looking at Florida, Iowa, what you guys are doing. But yeah, and so that really kind of, I was see the conversation then to now of where we're at with like education. People are like outraged of like, where's education come into the play? Like I thought we want to teach our kids. We want to learn, just like having the separation of church and state,
Well, there's a fear of challenging children too.
Yes.
Inviting ideas that are uncomfortable and hard to process, but that's what school's for.
Yeah.
That's teaching children how to think. That was what that comic, the Spider-Man comic, did for me.
Yeah.
And it was uncomfortable, but it was an important growing moment for me. And if we shield our children from that, it's certainly not like, oh, let's throw everything at them. There still is curation, but at some point you have to trust the teachers and librarians. They're in this battle every single day, and they know their children far better than we do, and in some cases far better than their own parents do.
They certainly know the books far better
Yes.
than the parents do.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, it's just a very few number of parents or people challenging these books.
Yeah.
But they're loud.
But they are so loud,
Yeah.
and they are organized, and they're on education boards. And sorry, I finished this 2 weeks ago, maybe, The Right to Read, the
Mhm.
American Bookseller Association's handbook on fighting book bans. It's really good, and it gives you like step-by-step things you can do depending on how much time you have. It's like, well, you could do this if you want to be working on this every day, or
Yeah.
this if it's just once a month. Like, go to school board meetings. Make sure that other people's voices are heard other than the very loud, angry people.
Yes.
Do you have copies of that to sell?
Probably.
Get them now. Storybooks.
Yeah.
Second storybooks.
There's definitely one copy inside the store.
The Right to Read.
It's definitely our, local librarians who are really kind of putting in the fight for like a lot of these books.
Yeah, and that is, so we've had teachers and librarians, we've had this discussion with them, and this is the reason that bookstores are important. The demographic who is not entirely demographic, but the majority of the demographic that supports challenging banning books based on content are also free market capitalists or have a love for free market. And although I'm probably lean socialist, that is an advantage that we have. You don't have a lot of Republicans.
Both ways.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of Republicans wanting to tell books stores, and businesses what they can do with their lives. So we have teachers that are like, I'm just going to bring in all these books and put them in my class and damn the consequences. And they're like, no, you're a good teacher. Keep your job. Let us do this for you. Librarians the same way. Like, the fact that we as a society build these incredible buildings and fill them with books that you can just go get for free. We value information this deeply that we are just like, we're all throwing in on libraries is incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I will continue having hope in this nation as long as libraries exist. So if a librarian's like, I don't know if we can fight this fight, great, let us fight it for you. That is what bookstores are here for. We can take those chances.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was young, I read things. I would read my sister's summer reading list. She was 4 years older than I, and then report back and give her book reports from each book.
Love it.
And so I read Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Mm.
And so I think I was 9 at the time. And so my question was, what's a prostitute?
I know.
And-
What a book to read as a 9-year-old. Oof.
And so she told me it's somebody who jumps out of an airplane without a parachute.
Nice.
Hey, there we go.
I like your sister. I like your sister.
Oh, no.
And I was like, this doesn't make sense contextually. So
It's
I'm trying
Heck
to
of a
figure it
metaphor,
out.
though. Heck of a metaphor.
Exactly. I was like, oh. So then, of course, I went to my dad. And
Did he give you the actual definition?
he was
More or less
displeased.
words.
That he was displeased that the question came up. But yeah, no, that was just one of those moments though where I realized that there were certain things that people didn't want me to know. And again, like, I think you're right that parents, teachers, they know when to make those things accessible. Especially teachers, right? Because that's kind of their job.
Yeah.
And librarians. But again, it made me want to read more. It made me want to know more. It made me curious to know what I wasn't being told and why. And I think that that's part of the issue, is that we have to encourage curiosity.
Yeah.
And as a society, a lot of times we tend to be like, oh no, you can't know this, or you can't know this yet.
Yeah.
And instead of having conversations, having the difficult conversations, you know, even if they're PG rated for the time being, but you've got to have those conversations. And books create a platform for conversation.
Krista Miller's new book, Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books. What is it called? Lula Dean's.
I know. I've actually read the book. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Lula
I-
Dean's something. It's really fun.
Basically, it's a little free library,
Mhm.
and Lula Dean has been banning books throughout her little district, and she's created her own little free library of what she thinks is appropriate books. And someone has gone in and put different books inside the covers.
Yeah.
All
It's really
banned
charming.
books.
It's really
It is.
charming.
Anyway, one of the threads of the novel is this boy who thinks his mother is dying because he doesn't know what a period is. And nobody will explain it to him. She's like, oh, mom's bleeding. Oh, it's really serious. No one's talking about it. And it's like, no, just explain to this 12-year-old what a period is. And,
Yes.
like, he takes it fine. It's fine. But like,
Yeah.
that's the whole narrative of the book is like, don't underestimate children. You know, don't keep them in the dark. Don't make taboo subjects that aren't taboo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what banned books are trying to do. They want to make anything queer pornographic, right? That's like, oh, if it's got a queer character, something's pornographic, just because they think it's taboo. They don't want it.
Yeah, or sexualized in some kind of way.
Some of them I got really confused with, because I was like, why is this book banned? I don't.
Right,
Some
Drama
kids-
by Raina Telgemeier.
Yeah, like,
It's crazy. It's crazy that got, of all the books that got banned, it's because of one panel where two people awkwardly kiss.
yeah.
Like,
Right.
super innocent.
It's just, it's one of those where, again, it just makes me want to ask more questions. And as a kid, that's exactly what that would have done. Oh, you said I can't read this? Oh, I'm reading this. And that's what I did with my sister's books. Like, I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to read this? Great. Like,
Yeah, and that should be the open path to these conversations. And the earlier you can start introducing these difficult ideas to your kids, you know, and like you said, you know, you frame it for the child's understanding, but like, I don't know when I learned what menstruation was, but it was definitely later and it should have been.
Mhm.
Whereas my 5-year-old, you know, my two older sons, they all learned super early because it's not a big deal.
yes.
It's like there's this whole cabinet in the bathroom that is very specific, and this is reason that you don't take them out and put them in the toilet. You know, and you know, sex, drugs, all of that. Like, people who live very differently than us. These are important things to for your children to understand as early as possible. Not in any kind of like, you know, this is how we believe, but like, this is, you know, how different people believe. This is the reason that these two parents, both of them are male, but they still have a child, and it's no different than our family.
But that is why they want to ban books. They don't want to normalize it. They don't want not only their kid thinking it's okay, they don't want anybody thinking
What the
it's okay.
traditional ideals.
They want to keep everything that they do not agree with as taboo. That's what it's not about what they're worried about their kid learning. It's they're worried about what your kid is learning.
Yeah.
They don't want your kid to indoctrinate their kid with ideas of equality.
Yeah, and the danger of that,
Insert value here.
yeah, and the danger of that is you're not preparing children to be honest with themselves and define healthy outlets. You know, if you put things into a drawer and tell the children they're not to look in the drawer, they're going to look in the drawer, but they're not going to have the understanding. They're not going to have the
Any
sense
tools.
Yes.
to
any
understand
tools, the sense of safety, and they're going to pursue it in the most dangerous way possible.
that sense of safety. I think that is a really great point, is what books are for. You were saying that, like, you didn't know what a prostitute was. Like, you don't need to really ban books for children to get it out of the hands of children. If children read it, they don't understand it, it's going to go over their head. And if they do understand it, it's too late. They already know, and this is a safe place where they can learn about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better to
hopefully-
learn about it in a book and process emotions with the main character or all the other characters, instead of being confronted with it in real life for the first time and having no idea.
Yeah, and trusting your parents or your support group enough that you can be like, hey, what's a prostitute? And you know it's not, you're not going to get in trouble for asking.
Yeah.
Like my kid was like, hey, does Trump do any good things? And you have to take a breath and be like, this needs to be a positive conversation. He asked an honest question. You need to make him feel not awkward and weird
Completely
about
disenchanted
that.
with the country he lives in already.
Yeah, but like, how do you make it like so the child isn't afraid to ask questions,
Right.
even if you're not happy with those questions?
But also, like, I kind of think that, like, parents who are all about the banning of the books and stuff are also trying to, like, shy away from responsibility of actually taking an interest in what their children are reading or learning, because they don't want to. You know, they're like, I don't want to have to know what you're reading, so I'm just gonna let these politicians or these other people just tell me, like, it's a bad book.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And this comes up with a new age of like, you can give a kid like, here's a book, has all the information you need, or here's TikTok, and it might not be all the information, but you like it.
Yeah, and
They're going to
also
go with, you know, the visual media.
what's on TikTok is crazy.
Oh,
Yes.
man.
Is crazy.
Yes.
And so why aren't we more afraid of that? We shouldn't ban TikTok.
No.
We shouldn't ban TikTok. But
We are
It
against
is- it's
censorship of all kinds.
Yes.
Yes, free speech. Free speech. Yes.
But again, like, I
it's
learned-
interesting that that's where our focus is.
Yeah. And like there are certain things like my grandfather taught me about the Holocaust using an American tale. He's like, all right, we were the mice. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, and, you know, it was a way for us to have a conversation without me being scarred for life.
I think that's how I learned about it too. Like American, that is the safe way to learn about something really scary.
Yes.
You need you need it through fiction before you can handle the reality.
A friend of mine, she had parents that were afraid of hard conversations too. And when she was 13, they hired a babysitter and gave the babysitter information on sex. You know,
Oh, God.
how to talk to your kid about sex.
They
And they
hired a
laugh.
babysitter to talk about.
There we go. But that's extra pay right there.
Oh my gosh, I know, right?
She's wonderful, but it was a bit of a bumpy ride through her teens and 20s because of that. So
Oh man. Yeah, that's rough. But yeah, I think books allow us a way into hard conversations, allow us a
Yes.
way to have conversations that need to be held in our society that people don't necessarily want to have because they're scary or they're difficult or they bring up uncomfortable truths that just, you know, and so rather than ban books, I feel like we should just be like, all right, like,
Let's read all the books.
yeah.
As a country, let's have a book club. We're gonna
As adults, let's bring back the pizza thing where like if you read this many books,
Book
you
it,
get
thing.
you get pizza at the end for reading all of your books.
Yes.
Yes.
what was it? Spaghetti Warehouse is trying to get something up and running. Like
Oh my God,
Pizza Hut
yes.
used to do.
We need the adult
I'm trying to-
version of this.
I'm trying to get Sauce to do it, but no,
Oh.
we haven't made any headway yet. But hopefully,
Yeah, we used to.
I fully support
We
this.
sold a sticker that said there was like adults that never like had a personal pan pizza and read books for it over the summer. Like it shows that like they didn't do any of this.
Yeah.
Yes. Like that's my favorite.
Yes, people. That's like an unlocked memory that people are like, oh my god, I can't believe I remember doing that.
And so to kind of bring it back to bookstores, I think that's the important thing for especially parents, because whenever it is a book about a difficult subject, as a parent, there is anxiety about it, even though like even me, like whenever you see a book where it's like, I'm not exactly sure if I can trust this book to handle this subject delicately, that's where bookstores come in. If parents get to know their bookstore owners and know that the bookstore owners are vetting this, it makes it easier for the parent to, okay, here is this huge thing that I'm about to give to my child. And I know that this is going to lead to conversations that will ultimately get us there, but I want to make sure that this is that they're handling it with the caution,
Yes.
required of this subject.
Have you read The Art of Libromancy?
No.
Have you read The Art of Libromancy?
Tell me more.
The Art of Libromancy. You both really should. It is about
I'm getting on that train.
booksellers. It's about selling books
Mhm.
as as a practice, as a anyway, and it's this.
Do you carry it in this bookstore?
Yes.
You can purchase it now. The Art of Liberacy at Second Story Books.
I forget the author.
I will walk home with that book today.
But it's a great opportunity, I think, and that's a great segue into to purchase this book, because it also, buying books from these kinds of stores, especially at this time of season, getting books as gifts for people.
Mm-hmm.
I will always say, people ask me, what do you want? I want books. I always want books, right? And if you're not sure what books to get me, gift cards work too. And then I'll go get my own books. But books are a great gift because, again, it's like a 2-for-1 deal. You are buying books for somebody, showing that you know them a little bit, showing that you care about them.
It's exchange of personalities.
Yes. Give them your favorite book. And then that's a great conversation.
3 for 1, because then after they read it, you get to talk about it and like grow that friendship.
And I never feel guilty about buying a book, which is also nice, because my little Jew heart sometimes feels guilty when I buy things, but never a book, ever.
Well, books are like a portal into a different way of living. Like it's like a balm for all the damage that social media and the internet inflict on us on a daily basis. The internet has given us a lot of amazing things, and social media has its benefits too.
Uh-huh.
But like, we are being, just bombarded with little bites of delight that have changed our brain chemistry, have changed the way that we talk to one another. We yell at each other all of the time now, and look where it's brought us. Whereas books force us to be quiet, to slow down, and to process information. It is an active medium. You have to work hard to read. So as booksellers, we have to, make sure that this investment of time and effort that people are doing whenever they take on a book is worth it. And also giving them the cover to feel okay. Oh, this is a classic, you must read that. No, screw that. Don't read the books that make you happy.
Yes.
If this
Yeah.
book is not making you happy, stop reading it.
Unless you wanted to not be happy when you read it. Britni
Correct.
is always recommending books like this will destroy you.
But in the best way.
You're gonna ugly cry for weeks.
Yes. We're all like, yes, we have all had those books.
Yes.
But yeah, no, it's not homework. You're not reading books to outread somebody else.
Or to
You're
get a person pan pizza.
Well, okay,
True.
that is the reward that we
That
want.
is what we want.
You're not taking off boxes. Nobody's giving you a report card on this. Reading is a very personal,
Yes.
rewarding experience. It should be.
Mhm.
You should be reading for yourself.
I think that's the hard thing about school, right? Because I have always been a voracious reader,
Mhm.
but I would go out of my way not to read the books that were assigned to me. Sorry, Mrs. Shuttleworth. And read every other book I could get my hands on, just because that book was assigned and I was mad that they told me to read that book. And then later
Uh-huh.
I'd go back and read it and be like, that was great.
So you have pathological demand avoidance too.
Yes.
There you go. That's, yeah.
Like everyone else in the class is reading it. I want to read something else.
Well, and you have this whole hordes of people who once loved reading as they were growing up, and they lost that because of the school experience. And school is great, and it has to do this, but people forget that they can read for love
Yes.
and enjoyment.
And like in my classes, I always try to bring in as many different kinds of voices as possible. It's Trevor Noah, we're bringing in Zadie Smith, we're bringing in, I do make them read Apple Fugard. But I just have tried to bring in as many different voices as I possibly can. But again, I'm always trying to walk that line between, I need you to read this because I need you to hear what voices can sound like.
Yeah.
And I want you to enjoy reading.
Yeah.
And that's always a fight.
That's why you need to find those like gateway books, like you were saying about Wallflower.
Yeah.
Excellent gateway book. Talks about something real, is accessible. Like you just, as a bookseller, you need to find the right,
Yes.
Balance,
the right gateway book. Or we're going to start with this one,
Yes.
and then they'll come back and maybe we'll start. It's a process. It's a
It is.
long-term
Yeah.
process.
Graphic novels are great for that, and that's the reason they
True.
become. So we call them the gateway drug to literacy,
yes.
because anybody
Yeah.
can crush a graphic novel.
Yes.
Anybody can read a graphic novel, unless you have severe dyslexia or something like that, some actual physical barrier. But if it's a time thing, read some graphic novels, and it'll
Yeah.
get that muscle working. It's like grabbing the 1 pound weight. Somebody comes in and like, I haven't read a book in years. here's Infinite Jest that I'm going to buy. And be like, okay, let's think about this. Like, do you want to go into the gym and pull up 500 pounds right off the bat? No, let's ease into this. I just read The Employees by Olga something. She's like a Danish author. But it's like, it's meaty, but it's also a super fast read. Then it is essentially a book of letters. You could read it in an afternoon. And so it's like that light read, heavy read, heavy read.
Mm-hmm.
Like a book for yourself, like just because you want to enjoy it, and a book that you feel like you're going to grow with. And I've been reading voraciously for a very, very long time, but I still do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need to do something for myself.
It's those books that I read, those big tomes like A Lady Chatterley's Lover that stay with me. I'm like, oh man, I was not expecting. And then the books I read just for me, I've already forgotten about. It was just another murder mystery. But I do love my murder mysteries.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that stick with you. You're like, wow, I'm going to be thinking about this, and I'm going to be talking about this with other people. And since I've opened the bookshop, we're almost a year old now.
Congratulations.
The real conversations I've had with people, like, it has improved my quality of life significantly. Having conversations about real topics with real people, and not on the internet or just with the same two people that I always word vomit about my books about, has made a big difference. And I know it's made a difference for the people who come in here to talk about it. Having real discussions, it does something in your brain. That humans are meant to communicate this way. And when all of your interactions with people are little comments on the internet, it is a sort of socialization, but it's not hitting deep enough, not getting to.
It's also you fall into the echo chamber so fast. These are micro communities. All you tend to self-sort into very specific ways of thinking, and you don't have those outside voices coming in and challenging you, or if you do, they often get shouted down. Whereas a really, really, really good book has a diversity of thought and a diversity of ideas from book to book to book that make you challenge what you already think. And that's why empathy is, a byproduct of reading, because you're stepping into other people's lives who are nothing like you and forcing you to actively live inside their world. And that's just not something you can get from the internet.
Yeah.
And building on that, the book club. My favorite book club is when we've got some people who loved it and some people who hated it.
Yeah.
And some people who are undecided, and you're talking about it and people change their minds based on what they heard. Like, oh, I didn't even think of it that way.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. And that is just delicious.
Yeah,
that's what I want all the time.
Everybody's right. Everybody's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
No,
I
book
can't hear your
clubs
perspective
is
on things.
the best.
Yeah. Agreed. We solved it.
Okay, so everybody, your homework is to join a book club.
Yeah.
To join a books club and come see these amazing bookstores and the identities that they have and the amazing communities that exist within them. Because I feel like every bookstore is its own little
community.
Yes.
Yeah, there should be one in like every neighborhood. Everyone should have their own little neighborhood
With a bookstore that reflects the personality of the neighborhood. Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's also a big part of what each of yours do, is they represent the communities that you are part of. Okay, well, we could keep going forever.
Let's do it.
Is this not a live stream?
But Charles, Kathryn, Jason, I just want to thank you all so much for coming out and chatting with me. It's been so much fun. I have more questions, so we'll have to do a second round. Part two. But everybody else, remember, 'tis the season to go buy books, because it is a gift that nobody will ever be sad to get. And then we're going to do this again. Maybe not an if, maybe a definitely. But we'll do
definitely.
Maybe definitely. Words are hard.
Words are so hard.
But we will do this again in the, winterish spring.
The first quarter?
the first quarter because we have a book trail to get on, and hopefully we'll bring some of you along with us as we go investigate every bookstore in the area and find what secrets they hold within. So thank you all again for listening. Send me your questions, send me your ideas, and just remember, all the world's a stage, and you too can be a shrew.